Hello, Tony.
Please.
So, Tony, you will just want to make sure your phone's not right in front of your mouth. So you kind of want to hold it kind of away from your ear, but like you hold a normal house phone.
Like this?
Beautiful. That's way better sound
You
quality.
hearing me?
That's beautiful. So, greetings, Earthlings. Another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. Dave Smith here with good friend Tony Schultz. And we just kind of want to deconstruct the economy a little bit.
Okay.
Loose knit conversation. That's we'll start there, and who knows where we go.
All right. Let's do this.
Let's do this. So I just got done doing a little 18 minutes kind of rant on just a loose knit thing of like what we're told about the economy, these myths and these fear factors, right? Like we need to protect the economy, protect American interests, and they're not talking about your interest and my interest, Tony, right? They're talking about
Really?
Exxon's right to go into Iraq and take their oil. That's the kind of interest they're talking about protecting, right?
Well, I mean, obviously the corporate interests, Dave, rule the day and they have for quite a long time. And, basically if you're a Republican, it's, it's in hyperspace with them. But the Democrats aren't exactly great at it. But what I would say, Dave, is there's certain of these economic indicators that are going very well right now, which is going to make Trump very difficult to beat come November the 3rd. But when we peel back the onion a little bit, I think we see a lot of angles where Democrats can really beat Donald Trump over the head with this. And the vast majority of the people, Dave, I think you know this as well as anybody, a $400 bill right now, an emergency $400 expense, they can't cover that.
Right.
The Democrats can't make any hay out of that.
But that's what I don't understand, Tony, is what is and I think I'm coining a Dick Cheney phrase here. We're taking the gloves off, right? Why can't the frickin' Democrats take the gloves off for once and just and hit them with everything? I'm not saying to, go Watergate on them, but use the facts and just annihilate them with their own facts.
Well, Dave, here is a party, a bunch of senators now, and a lot of the Congress people too, but the senators that wouldn't vote against him in the impeachment trial, the removal phase of the impeachment trial, Dave, they are not moved, Dave, by witnesses, corroborating testimony, and evidence. That doesn't move them. And then they're complaining about, well, the Democrats haven't proved their case. Well, there's a whole bunch of more witnesses and apparently documentation out there that's available that saying Trump is guilty in this whole Ukraine scandal. And yet, no, they just block it. We don't have to hear it. And isn't that a little ridiculous, Dave? You're having a
Well,
trial with no witnesses and no documents. Like, we don't need that now in a trial? That's a
Well,
little
now we're
ridiculous.
getting sidetracked onto the Trump thing. But if you want to go there, I think the reason they don't want to touch Ukraine is because Biden's guilty as hell. If you go to
Yeah,
Ukraine,
the Ukrainian officials have been saying time and time again, there's nothing illegal about what he's doing. If you want to, make it about nepotism, Dave, I'm all for it. But
that's what
let's
I'm talking about. There's no illegality there, but it's nepotism and it's the emoluments clause and
get him, Dave. I mean, for us anti-Trump people, and we're anti-Trump for a reason. It's not just because
I
we
want to
don't like him.
clarify because people might hear this and think, oh well, they're just Trump haters. No, I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not anti anybody. I
I'm
look at the
anti his
I look
policies.
at the policies, and I think you do too. And I don't dig his policies. Um, and like you were saying, about the economy. Well, George Bush got elected to a second term, right?
Right, because it
I
hadn't fallen apart. The wheels hadn't come off yet.
because the wheels hadn't come off yet. The economy was doing okay, so everybody's like, well, status quo. I guess at least we know, what we're
Yeah.
gonna get. Um, so, but yeah, but just what kills me is, how much control does the president have over the economy? Not that much.
Well,
Um,
policy
it,
policies do matter, though, Dave, and
well,
I think
policies and appointments, right? And it matters for
we're
those
gonna talk about
insiders so much more, right? Like when you appoint like the head of Goldman Sachs to set policy. Well, guess who's going to benefit from those policies, right?
yeah, that's pretty safe to say.
So once again, that's American interests, but you and I are kind of getting bent over with no lube on that one. And the banksters are smiling all the way to the bank, laughing, going, "Holy shit, I can't believe they're not taken to the streets." I mean, they
Yeah.
must just be laughing, going like, "Really? Pitchfork sales aren't going up yet?"
And look, Dave, you can blame the first guy I would blame now that we're talking about this, and given that it's heading into the 2020 election, I'd blame Barack Obama on this one because he really had a chance to take those banksters to the woodshed, Dave.
There you
And
go.
if you,
Let's prove to our listeners that we
yeah,
are not biased. We are not beholden to a party. As a matter
or
of
a
fact,
candidate or any politician.
or a politician or a person. I'm all about the issues, issue by issue. I weigh them up. Whoever's playing my game, I'm with that person. So, and history is showing that Barack was an absolutely fucking horrible president.
See, I would disagree with that assessment, but on this particular matter, when he had a chance and those banksters were scared, and he had a chance to take him to task, and he really didn't.
He
He
could have
just
been the
kind
new
of a
FDR.
slap on the wrist, and things were improving quite a bit and moving forward after that disastrous end to the George W.
Yep.
Bush presidency. And what were the main things about the George W. Bush presidency, Dave? Big tax cuts for the rich, deregulation, especially in the economic community. What I think I'm trying, I'm not wording this properly. The financial sector, deregulation of the
Financial
financial
sector,
sector.
energy
Tax cuts,
sector.
and a big expense for the military. I mean, you have the numbers usually better than I do on this, Dave. We were spending more than the next 8 countries combined, 9 countries combined, and we just find a way to spend more. And what happened at the end of the Bush presidency with that going on? It runs into a crash. And where did he leave the deficit? It was really ugly.
Yeah, let me interject something there.
Yeah,
So about when he took office, he had a surplus.
he did.
Right now,
Clinton actually left him a surplus.
Bill Clinton was a bastard for all his own reasons. Thank you very much for NAFTA, Bill. That's why Detroit and most of Ohio are freaking ghost towns. Thanks a lot. Awesome. Yep. Love you for that.
To his presidency as well. Absolutely.
So that's sits in his fucking lap. So thanks for that, Bill. But George Bush inherited a surplus for the first time in, you probably know better than I do, decades.
I couldn't tell you exactly when, but
decades, right?
Why is this myth out there, Dave, that there's so many people that are under this illusion that it's Republicans that are responsible when it comes to, expenses,
Small government, they spend less, right? It's all a myth.
Look at what happens every time. And our guy Thom Hartmann has spoken about this on several occasions. The idea for the Republicans, Dave, they get their guy into the White House, and the idea is spend, 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 and then if the Democrat gets elected, you start screaming about debt and deficits. And we're going to hear this. We heard this with Sean Hannity over there on Fox News. How much about, oh my God, Barack Obama, look what's going on with this debt. And it's like, well, wait a second. It was the guy that you wanted so bad that inherited, as you said, Dave, this deficit was zero or negative. The debt surplus could have started to come down. A surplus, thank you.
Surplus, $77 million surplus Bill Clinton left him. And I'm no Clinton fan.
What happened? What did George W. Bush said? Well, let's give the people their money back.
Do you
Yeah, it
know
means more
that?
tax cuts for the rich. That's what it meant.
His, let me interject real quick because this is
Yeah,
important. His first act, George Bush's first act, was to give everybody a check for $300. Do you remember that?
I do have a memory of that. Yeah.
So what the fuck does $300 mean in your life? Nothing. But you
Well,
know
it
what it
doesn't
did?
mean anything, Dave, if they're going to cut social services and run up a debt that we have to pay interest on.
But you, it did instantly overnight. It eliminated our surplus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we had to borrow money from the banks at interest. So he was bending over for the banks right there.
Well, the numbers just don't lie, Dave. He inherited a surplus. He left it at $1 trillion, and a big reason because he attacked the wrong country after 9/11. And
Right.
the
Well,
Democrats deserve blame for that too, Dave. They
but he
voted, a lot
threw
of them
away
voted
the
for that.
surplus his first day in office. First day. First day, dude. With
Yep.
one signature. Boom. Yeah. And then proceeded to rape us and like lied us into, you know, 2 wars. Dude, they're both going on 20 years now. Right?
Like 2003, 2004, right?
Yep.
I
Remember
can read.
Gulf sickness? Gulf War
What?
syndrome?
I don't.
Remember that? The first one? Soldiers were coming back and they didn't know what the fuck was wrong with them.
I don't go. That sounds vaguely familiar, but you have to fill me in on what exactly the symptoms were, or the.
Dude, Gulf War syndrome. So it was all the symptoms of like chemical and radiation poisoning. So you're losing hair, you're getting cancer,
Jeez.
you fucking, yeah, not good, right? You know what it was? There's an awesome documentary everybody needs to watch. It's called Beyond Treason. And it talks about how I think it was Clinton that was in charge when he did this. So, do you know how we knew that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction at one time?
No.
We sold them to him.
Oh.
We had the receipts. So
Oh, that's
we
right.
absolutely,
He was the enemy of our enemy. That's right.
so we absolutely knew that he had them at one time. We didn't know if he still had them, but it was, so that's how they were able to make that argument, right? Is that at one time everybody knew he had them,
Mm-hmm.
but then we sold them to him. So did other countries, but we did too. And to use them against Iran. And at the same time, the CIA was funneling weapons to Iran to fight Iraq in the Iran Contra scandal.
Yikes.
So, yeah, so we're funding both sides of that fucking war, but we gave Iraq chemical fucking weapons. In this documentary, dude, they show a soldier's head cam. He goes into a little bunker and there's floor to ceiling chemical and biological weapons made by the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, and there was one other Israel.
Well, who says we don't manufacture anything anymore?
Apparently they're busy over at Maryland where they make anthrax.
Yeah, we might not export a lot of goods anymore, but you know what?
Hey, so the Gulf War syndrome, dude, was we found these things that were evidence, right? Like has our fucking name right on it, and it's in Iraq, not looking good for us, right? So we blew them up, but we didn't bother to tell our troops to get it the fuck out of the way first.
Jeez.
And they were downwind.
Were there a lot of lawsuits? Or there were
they all
money
died.
being paid to these guys that are coming back all screwed up, or they just deny it?
They denied it, and then the guys all died.
Did anybody get to court with this and prove this? And how far did it go?
It's a great documentary. You got to watch it. The guy who was hired to go investigate it down there ended up catching the sickness himself, and he was one of the main people interviewed in the documentary. So what it was is anti-tank ammunition has fucking plutonium in it, and that's what allows it to pierce through the fucking tank. So everything around that is toxic, but they didn't tell the soldiers that because they wanted to study the effects on the soldiers.
Yeah.
And you know what? They even allowed soldiers to take trophies from the first Gulf War. So you could, if you killed a tank, you could go in and take all 4 of their helmets or whatever, all the dead guys inside. But all those things were full of fucking radiation.
Yeah, probably something that, they should have alerted them to.
But once again, new weapon. We wanted to see how it fucks with people, right? What better than to try your own guinea pigs? Because it was Henry Kissinger that said soldiers are just pawns to be used in the chess game of war, of foreign policy, excuse me. Right?
Yeah,
so I'm not condoning it. I'm far from it.
Of course not.
I'm fully opposed to it. I'm just saying how these fucking bastards that get us into these wars are so removed from the human element of it.
Yeah. Obviously, we just do this stuff over and over again, Dave, and it seems like everybody's sick of war, yet we get so much of it. And if another thing happens, another terrorist attack or whatever, I hate to say it, but I just feel like, the American public will just get all fired up and ready to go attack someone else again. Right. We just don't learn from these kind of things. I can remember way back when, before Bush had committed troops to the Middle East, you and I were talking about this, and I was saying to you, you were living on the houseboat in Saucy way back then, and I'm like, God, I don't believe he's really going to do it. He's really going to do this, and so many other people there was a fever going on at the time, Dave.
We got to get them.
The war drums were beating, and it was
frightening.
I guess it's easy to make that statement now, but I don't know if you remember, Dave, I was saying it, and I think you were saying it, and there were some others that were saying it. It's like, we probably should rethink this. Just hold on a second. Let's rethink this. Okay? 9/11 was this traumatic event for our country, but the reaction turned out to be completely wrong.
And here they are just fucking storming the gates with the response, like already pre-printed before the event happened. Just ready to fucking, oh no, we already know what to do. Right? I mean,
it's just a shame, but again,
and why are we in that?
This is the funny thing about that, Dave, is Trump says that, Laura Ingraham says that, Tucker Carlson says that, and so these prominent people on the right are saying it, and we're still there.
Yeah, well, let me tell you why we're there. Oh my God! So, well, let's break it down for everybody. So, oh my God, I did an investigative paper on this, and I got an A+. And it's all about oil pipelines. It's all about oil pipelines. Unbelievable. So the TIPI pipeline, Turkmenistan, which is on the border of the Soviet Union, between the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, is the 4th largest natural gas reserve in the world. Right? So the Soviet Union wants it, and we want it. And well, Soviet Union's on one side, Afghanistan's on the other side. So guess what? We're in Afghanistan. Now enter the pipeline. The head of Unocal Oil, Ahmed Karzai, came up with the idea for the pipeline.
Yeah, that name sounds familiar. Isn't he head of one of those countries?
We appointed him the head of Afghanistan. Funny you should mention that. Yeah.
Coincidence. Just a coincidence.
Isn't that a coincidence? Right. So then every village that you've ever heard about, the Kandahar province, the this, the that, the this, those are all villages along the route of the pipeline where the quote unquote rebel or insurgent force is basically telling our oil company, get the fuck out of our country.
Hmm.
but we're putting our pipeline through there, so our soldiers have to protect it. Um, so that's the root of it, right? Then enter the CIA, and opium, and dark money. Well, the leading producer of heroin used to be Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand.
The Golden Triangle.
Thank you. Exactly. And it's now public record that the fucking CIA, was operating in Laos and Cambodia during, you know, so we created Pol Pot and all this shit, but we were getting tons of fucking opium out of there. And they were filling their coffers so they could fund other dark operations without having to ask Congress for money, right? So now they're doing that in Afghanistan. Now Afghanistan is the leading producer of heroin in the world, only since our military has been there. That's the clincher. Since our military arrived in Afghanistan, it became the leading producer.
And how ridiculous is this, where we're spending all this money, all of our tax, so much of our tax money in this, and yet as Americans, we still have to pay all those high prices for OxyContin. This is bullshit. How come we don't get free heroin?
How come we're not
How
getting
come it's so expensive?
and free oil, Tony? Like that. Well, oh my God, I hit on that in my last little podcast, but I was like, we're such sheep. They don't even have to bribe us that way, Tony. We pay so much for fucking gas. You'd think we'd be getting it for $1 a gallon, but no.
You would think.
Streets.
But I got to tell you, Dave, that there's, I'm kind of glad it's not $1 a gallon, really.
Yeah.
But that's kind of another story. But I hear what you're saying. It's like we spend all this tax money, and what do we really get out of it?
Yeah.
But I would rather the whole thing, be different. And this is why policy matters, Dave, because we have a president in the White House right now that just openly goes right along with this party, even though the rest of the world doesn't go along with this. They believe in the science. We've got a president that says it's a Chinese hoax. That I will tell you.
Well, I will tell you why he's getting greased up by. Look at who he's surrounded by. This is the cabinet with the most billionaires ever in history.
Yeah, and to think that they have our best interests in mind is ridiculous.
Your mind, if you think that. It's. Do you really think the king worried about the peasants? Do you really?
Not until they were at his door.
Yeah.
Not until they were storming the gates.
Yeah. Not until he heard them knocking. Exactly. Not until he could see the reflection, the shadow of a pitchfork in front of a fucking torch. Exactly.
And now again with policy, here's where some of the media, I believe, really does let us down. And I'm not one of these guys to think there's nothing to be believed and they're all just lying to us. But here's where a major criticism of mine comes in is we are not talking enough about policy and who's setting it and what these policies do. And let's go back a few years and get some context with some of these and go, this hasn't worked well. And the policies that, the previous administration under Obama, well, they put a lot more environmental policies out there. And Trump overturns every one of them. So you can just forget about, is man-made climate change real? And forget about that just for a second and just go, how about just clean air and clean water and not spending so much on oil for fuel? Well, moving forward with green energy, why is that a bad thing?
Well, let's agree with this. Does it matter if climate change is man-made or natural at this point? No.
Why contribute to it?
Islands are just going to disappear. We're having firestorms. It's the whole reality of life has changed. We need to combat this no matter what the fuck's causing it. We need to combat it any way we can, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So I want to get that argument out of the way. It doesn't matter if it's man-made anymore at this point. Right. That argument is moot because it's like the 11th hour.
Well, man-made, David, that we're contributing to it and making it far worse because we keep burning too many fossil fuels and
right.
production and all this kind of stuff that just contributes to it. That, well, is it really so bad that we move to the future and make this better? And like I said, okay, take away the climate change part of it and just say, how about clean air and clean water? Why is that bad? No more reliance on fossil fuels. How many of these wars do we fight over? We're building, like you said, Dave, we're in there, and a lot of this policy is based on putting pipelines in the Middle East. How about building water pipelines here in America so the place doesn't burn up, and places that are arid and dry, maybe we can get more water to it.
Yeah, yeah. I've been saying that for years.
Have.
Pipe water, not oil.
My sister and I were talking about this several years ago. Well, I think a few years ago when we still had that first really bad fire season in California. Now we've had like what, three in a row?
You mean
Where it's just
you mean the first time I was evacuated?
yeah, there you go. And what happened in Australia recently, Dave?
Oh,
They showed a map of Australia and they had the little fire symbols where these major fires were going.
a
The
third
whole continent was on fire.
a third of the country's burned.
It was just ridiculous. And people are going to sit there and tell you that no, man-made climate change has nothing to do with it. Well, that's not what the leading scientists are telling us.
Right, but I don't want
That's
to focus
completely
on I don't want to
telling
focus
us.
on that because then we get into an argument with some people.
Right.
What I want to focus on is it doesn't matter what's causing it. It's fucking running out of control. It's like a fire that's about to get too big to put out. So
Hmm.
whatever the cause is, we need to fucking put it out. Right? And I agree with
Right.
you. I mean, if you look at a fucking smokestack, have you ever stood behind a car?
Or have I?
An
Or
idling car. It can't
I've stumbled behind a lot of buses.
it can't be good, right?
No.
And then you multiply that times billions of fucking people. We're like little ants, little cockroaches, right? It can't be good. So whatever. If you think the science is still out, go ahead and think that.